Hello and welcome to the Outcry Theatre Podcast. I'm Becca Johnson-Spinos and I'm the Artistic Director of Outcry Theatre. Every episode of this podcast delves into the artistic process of creating theater. This episode is about our current production of Antigone by Sophocles. Hi, this is Miss Becca and I'm here with the stars of Outcry Youth Theater's Antigone. You guys want to introduce yourselves?
My name is Marcy Bogner, and I play Antigone.
My name is Peyton Nicholson, and I play Creon.
My name is Alex Gray, and I play Antigone.
These roles are obviously incredibly famous and have been played by a lot of different people since our story is almost 2,500 years old. So obviously very exciting roles to get cast as. I want you to talk to me about getting the cast list and finding out that you were cast in these parts.
Peyton, Isabella, Hamilton, and I, we're all texting each other, being like, when is it gonna come out? When is it coming out? It's gotta be out soon. And then we're all texting each other, and then we all get the email notification, and we all just go, oh, in the messages, and we all just dart to check. And I have a video of it, and I was just scrambling on my computer trying to pull it up in time, and I just go, and I couldn't, speak. I was so shocked. And it was such a thrilling experience just to see my name at the top of the cast list.
Yes. Everything Marcy said did, in fact, happen. For me, what I did was I was like, I'm going to take a shower, and by the time I get out, maybe it'll be there. So I had literally just taken a shower, and then the cast list came out, and I'm about to have to go to an online Zoom class, and so I was freaking out. I was like, this is crazy. Creon is huge, and so it was absolutely insane.
I was definitely not in on that anxious group chat, but I just saw the email notification and clicked on it, and whenever I see that, then I always just whenever I check the email, I always just kind of black out for a second. I just go oh my goodness, numb body. And I just started shaking, but good shakes. It was happy shakes. I was bouncing a lot. It was a very bouncy time, but it was very good.
So as I mentioned before, this is a very ancient story. It's one of the oldest plays that we have out of the Western canon. So the story and these characters are very, very famous. Why don't you start by telling me a little bit about your character and a little bit about the story and how it figures into the story?
So Antigone basically starts with Antigone getting in trouble for burying her dead brother Polynices, who was actually turning on their city of Thebes. And he and his brother Eteocles both ended up killing each other in battle, and that leads to Creon, me, that's who I'm playing, being the next king of Thebes. And Creon has declared that no one can bury Polynices, and so Antigone doing that is going to start a lot of trouble.
So Antigone is basically a powerhouse of a woman. She firmly believes in everything that she stands for. She loves talking about the dead and how she always talks about the approval of the dead and the gods and how she follows the gods' laws. And I really admire how much she sticks to her beliefs.
Yeah, as a character, she is very vocal about what she believes in, and she's very stubborn. And she places the law of gods way above the law of man. Everything she does is, driven by what she thinks the gods would want her to do and what she needs to do to honor her brother and to honor her family. She's always thinking about the things that are bigger than herself, and not just what's going to happen to her specifically in her mortal life, and I admire that a lot about her. I wouldn't necessarily say that she's fearless, but she definitely doesn't let fear get in the way of doing what she believes has to be done.
Creon is someone who, just like Antigone, is very determined to stick to his beliefs, and his beliefs are very much the opposite of Antigone. He believes in the law of man. He believes in what the ruler says goes, that the ruler gets to decide everything for the city. And he's very stubborn, just like Antigone. And I think that's really nice that you can see that even though they are almost polar opposites, they are almost parallel in so many different aspects. And I think that really makes things a lot more interesting later on in the show.
Talk to me a little bit about what makes our production unique and special, and kind of the ways that we are maybe changing a few things about the narrative or adding to it, or just sort of bringing something new to the story.
So the first thing, obviously, we are setting it in like a kind of futuristic post-apocalyptic time. So it's all out in the desert. And I mean, post-apocalyptic's just the best way to say it, you know, living in abandoned buildings. And it really adds a lot to Creon's point of view, I think, in that his whole thing is fighting for the city and the unity of the city. And that hits a lot harder when, you know, you're in a setting where that city is like the only thing left around. So having unity in that is very important. But we're also implementing the ensemble a lot more. Like, traditionally, they come in, they give their chorus speeches, and they're kind of detached from it. But in this, we're making all the main characters also part of the chorus and giving them chorus lines and parts in that really help develop their characters more and help us see what's going on in their journeys along the way.
For me, the aspect that I think is the coolest about the post-apocalyptic setting is that there's the war that like caused it all. And I think that's a nice like backstory to everything that's happened. And you really get to see that these characters are like so tough. They're so strong that they just like are determined to do whatever they possibly can to survive and to protect those around them. And I think this setting is really going to amplify that and really help develop those characters.
The chorus hardly ever leaves stage, so I think that also adds to the element of the show itself, and it gives helps with the idea that the area that they're in is one of the only areas that there's left, because otherwise they'd be elsewhere and not like in that room watching all the big arguments happen between the characters.
What themes, or how do you think the themes translate into the world we're living today? What do you think remains relevant about the show, even though we're so far removed from Sophocles, obviously, and certainly we've seen this story a million times. Why does it still feel vitally important? Why do we still need to be doing Antigone right now?
The biggest theme that I can think of is like feminism. It's thinking back about it. It's like shocking how Sophocles wrote a play that followed the story of a young woman doing what she believed is right. Like Creon says, "I am a man, you are a woman." That says it all. And it's like really proves that women are like still fighting for their rights, less so than they used to, but it's still a thing that women have to do, especially now with everything that's been going on. It's like really cool that we get to put something on like this.
For me, the biggest thing that I think is the coolest theme of the show is just honoring those who have died, even if you didn't agree with them. And that's basically what Antigone is completely standing up for. And I think it's a shame that Creon just doesn't see things that way, because you don't have to like love every single person, but I think everyone needs to be treated fairly and justly, even after they're gone. And I think Antigone's connection to the dead throughout the show, even before her brothers have died, where she's always had this interest and she's always just been pulled to like death, I think that's really interesting. And I think it's really cool to see that even back then, people still held grudges through death. And that's kind of something that a lot of people do now. And I think that to me is very interesting.
One message in Antigone that I think is still really important and relevant today is that it's never too late to admit your mistakes, and that that admitting you were wrong should not be something to be looked down upon. Like, that shouldn't be discouraged. It takes both Creon and Antigone a long time to learn that. They're both very stubborn and they're both so unwilling to sway at all in their beliefs. And by the end of the show, we can see, like, they talk a lot about it's not too late to change your mind. It's not too late to do what's right. you won't lose honor for changing your mind. And I think that's something that's still really important today.
We've added all of the main characters into the chorus, and that has allowed characters like Haman, who is only in one scene, Tiresias, who is only in one scene, and even Antigone, who's only in a few scenes, 3 scenes, to have a more strong presence in the show and have more relationships with the other characters. Talk a little bit about how that has deepened the relationship between your characters and also, I guess, the other characters, and what you feel that really adds to the show.
For me as Creon, a lot of these chorus sections in the show completely transform the world that Creon is living, and you go back into the past, or you relive events, or he even gets to see things that he wasn't there for, because in our production Tiresias does have some magic in him, and I think that's really cool. But just being able to like live those events and see those things happening, seeing Antigone bury someone and seeing all those things happen, I think is really important, not only for Creon, but all those characters who would have been at those events, to see first-handedly how those things worked.
Not even character specific, but just in general, I think that having all the main characters also be part of the chorus and have them on stage the whole time makes the show feel a lot more connected together. Like, without that, you have characters who play a major role plot-wise, but who don't really show up that much. And having their presence there the whole time really makes it feel a lot less disjointed. It makes it feel like a whole community. And so when bad things happen to those characters, it hits a lot harder, because even if they haven't been talking for as long, you've seen them on stage and you've seen them going about their life and having opinions on things, and it feels like you're a lot more connected to them.
So one of the big things for me is actually being able to interact with Haman, who is Antigone's fiance, because in the original script, Antigone and Haman have no scenes together. They're not seen on stage at the same time. But in our production, we have plenty of moments where we're interacting with each other, and it's really nice to be able to have that connection that you otherwise would have only heard from dialogue rather than being able to see it. And with Creon being in chorus sections as Antigone, I get to build a connection with him other than our just one scene, and really be able to like sympathize with him and be like, hey, bud, sorry this had to happen.
Speaking of Creon, obviously, in a traditional sense, he's obviously our villain, and Antigone is our hero, right? I mean, Antigone is right, and Creon is wrong on a, like, moral level. What's it like playing a character where you kind of have to, like, work really hard to justify all the things he says and does?
I think the biggest thing for me when I'm playing Creon is trying to just put myself in his shoes. If I was someone who had fought this entire war fighting for what I believed in alongside my family members, but also being attacked by an army led by a family member, I think I would probably have a lot of spite for that family member no matter what happened. And I think just thinking about it that way and understanding that what Polynices did was horrible and it caused so many people hurt and anguish, I think just thinking about it that way really helps me get in like the mindset of, oh, okay, I understand why he doesn't like Polynices, but I can also appreciate why Antigone does. And then as for like his hatred toward Antigone, I think it's justified in the fact that he's standing up for what he believes in, but I think, yes, it may not always be for the right things, but I think even the audience and myself can appreciate that what he's doing is right to himself, and I think that's beneficial for him.
There's a lot of challenges with this show. You guys both have long, extended monologues that are, a couple pages long. There's an incredible amount of dance and movement in this version of the story. You've got a lot of different things. What is the most challenging part about playing these parts?
The first thing I think of is just that the chorus never leaves the stage, so it's just that you don't really get a break and you just have to be on it all the time. But I also think that what's really difficult about this piece is that these words are very old, and it's not like Old English, but it's still kind of stilted and detached. So I feel like what's really challenging and really important is working really hard to make sure that the words feel new and raw and normal and conceivably like something a person would say. Like, they can't feel all stuffy and academic. It has to be very connected and real and human. So that's what's been the biggest challenge for me.
I have two challenges because they're like separate. For the chorus sections, it's like all the lines, and having lines within other people's lines has been tricky to like know the cues and say them in the right way. And you have to know them exactly, and you have to know the cues exactly. Otherwise, you're going to throw the whole thing off and it's going to look wrong. So that's been the most challenging thing with that. But as Antigone, my most challenging bit is like my final scene, because the emotional journey that I have to go on, I really have to like dig deep and pull from that and have to put myself in her shoes.
Creon's final scene is also such a journey, and you have to really build up to this huge emotional breaking point. And I think that's been one of the hardest things for me. But also, no one has touched on this yet, but the dancing in this show is absolutely insane. Like, it is wild. It's probably some of the hardest dancing that I've ever had to do in any show ever. And I think not only is it like kind of fun to do, like, I have to admit, like, the challenge is really there and it makes things a lot more exciting, but these dances look so good, and that like they're gonna totally blow the audience away. And I think just knowing that that's gonna happen just really motivates me to be even better at them.
What's the most fun part about playing these parts?
This might sound really petty, but I love arguing with people. No one ever wants to fight me, and that makes me so sad. But in this, like, half the stuff Antigone does is just arguing with people. So, I mean, look, I could like give a real answer and say it's really nice to get to dig deep into a character this old and try to make it feel relevant and new and make it feel connected, you know, to talk about these great moral dilemmas of what's more important, the state or your own personal morals. But I just really love getting to argue with people. That's it.
As Creon, I think my favorite thing about doing this show and getting to be on stage is getting to do scenes with every single character in the show. And a lot of these people I've never acted with on stage before. And also some of them are like some of my great friends. And I think just getting to have that time to act and really dive into art with other people that I cherish a lot is really important to me. And I think that's probably my favorite part of the show.
Like Alex, my favorite part has been being able to like argue with people, specifically Peyton. It's fun just getting to yell in his face with each other, just in a screaming match. But I also really enjoy being able to make all the connections with the people that I interact with on stage, because it's like such a strange thing, knowing what Antigone's done and what's going to happen to her and how they react with it and how she reacts to their reactions. It's just been really fun being able to build those connections.
Antigone is probably like the original feminist tale, like the original gal. So Sophocles was way ahead of his time. Did you feel like a burden? Like, did you feel nervous about the responsibility of carrying that? And also, how do you think our Antigone is maybe different than like a traditional version of Antigone?
I mean, I kind of felt the burden of that. It's one of those things that I was like, I can't do anything about the nerves for this, so I'm just not going to think about it. I tried to not think about filling those big shoes, but it's one of those things where even if I'm not thinking about her being like the OG feminist, it's one of those things I just really want to do right. I feel like, and this kind of touches on your second question about what's different about ours, like it can be kind of tempting to just make her the perfect hero and have her just, you know, have these beautiful morals and have these wonderful discussions and not have anything actually wrong with her. But like, she's pretty mean. Like, she says some messed up stuff. Her heart's in the right place. I'm on her side here. But I think we haven't shied away from making her rough around the edges, like especially in post-apocalyptic setting, you know, everyone's desperate, everyone's a survivor. And I think you just can't make her perfect and golden. You know, you have to make her feel like a real person who is fighting for something she believes in. And she might not be making all the right moves, but she is fighting for it with all her heart.
I did not feel a burden. I was just like, fear is the enemy. Gotta do the thing. We're ready to do the thing. So, like, our Antigone is, like, rough around the edges. She's got grit, she's got spunk, which has been hard for me to do, but I'm doing it. And so I think it's just really cool how different we've made her with that. And like Alex said, can be pretty mean, especially to her sister. Poor Ismene. Love her.
So not only is this like one of the hardest parts that we've ever had at Outcry, but you have essentially been single cast for the entire off-book process. What has that been like? And what, I guess, about this process has been, like, I guess, different for you than other processes because of that?
Obviously, having a double does tend to make off-book easier because you may just forget one of your lines, but maybe your double just happens to know the next one and things move on smoothly. Well, unfortunately, that was not the case for me, and for my expansive monologues where I'm just speaking a wall of text with no one else interjecting or doing anything, I had to know it. And I think that was probably the biggest thing for me. But also, it was almost kind of like this is like my chance to like prove that I know what I'm doing, that I can like do this work, that I know that I can like learn these 500 some lines. And I think I did a pretty good job at it. I mean, I had to call my occasional line, but I think I did a pretty decent job at it. But obviously, I can't deny it was quite stressful. Definitely many times I'd be sitting in class and I'd be like, I think I'm going to run over these lines actually. But I think for me, it probably was something that was not ideal, obviously, but I think in the end, it probably made me a better actor, to be completely honest. Probably gave me a better work ethic for like doing the stuff and like learning my lines and like learning everything I needed to know.
I have to give P a shout out for this process because it's been like such a dream, because we've worked together so long, but like not on a role this big ever. I just, every time he stops, I'm like, okay, well, I have a long list of notes to give you. And it's just, can you do this? Yes. Can you do this? Yes. Can you do this? Yes. So that's what you like to hear as a director. So it's been such a blast. And even though it's been stressful, I've absolutely adored it and had such a fun time. I think the single decision of not only deciding to make Tiresias part of the chorus, but also deciding to make Tiresias magical meant that our production changed radically, because it means that all these characters can see things that have happened in the past. It means all these characters can pull up people from the dead and just talk to them. It means that, all of these characters can see events that they weren't present at. And so a lot of the things that you would normally not see on stage are all things that we have on stage, all because we have this character that should only be in one scene, actually playing this sort of wizard version of himself. And we have this whole kind of like vocabulary when we talk about it. We talk about them being holograms. We talk about, literally seeing the sandstorm in the room with you. I think because of all the magic that we've brought into the show, you guys are really going to be transported to these places that these people are trying to talk about and tell you about.
So if you think you're going to come to the show, or at least live stream the show, and you're just going to be watching people sitting on stage for like 10 minutes saying one line with nothing else happening, you are wrong. Creon has like a 1.5-page monologue, and he's not just standing there. He's moving all over the stage, slapping the floor, doing his thing. People are talking with him. and like Watchmen has a big monologue, but he's not just standing there either. We're all interacting, going to the past, showing stuff that's happened. And so there's movement with all these big, long monologues. So you're not sitting there just bored watching someone talk forever.
I think our approach to Antigone is just to make it exciting and to captivate the audience. And I think we do it really well. Like Marcy was saying, no one is just standing on the stage doing nothing. I think probably for every single line of the entire show, there is a piece of blocking and somebody is doing something. Along with all the dances we've added, I think that the show is going to be far from boring or far from uninteresting. And I think that anyone who sees it will be pleasantly surprised with how entertaining and how incredibly awesome it is.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and make the bold statement that you could hate this script and you can hate Greek mythology and you can hate all of this writing and that you'll still be entertained for this show because, like, there's just always stuff going on, man. There's all this crazy blocking and all this crazy ensemble work and all these big dances and movement pieces and stuff. You could literally hate this entire story. I don't think you will. I think it's pretty bomb. But you could, and you would still have a great time just watching it. And it's one of those things where you can see it multiple times because everyone's always doing different stuff. So, you know, there's always new things to find and new things to look out for, new people's reactions to see. So much stuff is always happening. Like, visually, it's just awesome. And even if you're like, oh, I don't know any of the Greek mythology leading up to this, I'm not going to know what's going on. We got you, man. Like, the amount of times that we summarize all of Greek mythology in this is absolutely obscene. Like, we tell you about the war between these two brothers like 8 different times. We spell it out visually. We got you, man. We got you. You will be fine.
Obviously, I feel like we have to talk about the fact that we are making theater in a very unusual time. It's like so, like in some ways it's so just like every day for us because we've been doing this since June. Like pretty much all of us that are in this room have been at Outcry since the summer, since we were able to open up again. And so in some ways it just feels normal to us a little bit now. But I guess for me, I was just so grateful to start on like a new project and to dive into something so meaty. So just talk a little bit about the challenges that we face trying to make theater during COVID, and also whether it's a challenge or whether it's like we overcame this, you know, kind of your take on what it's like to be at Outcry basically 7 days a week. Since we're now doing Antigone and Assassins together, we're like really making some theater together in this time that is a really unusual time to be making theater.
When the world shut down, it felt like my life was over because theater is my life. It's what I want to do as a profession, and I just can't imagine my life without it. And then we got to come back, and it was like weird because we were still working through stuff. We had rehearsals outside, wearing masks, dancing in 100-degree heat, but doing the thing because it meant so much to us. And now we're still doing it, and we're working through all the kinks and figuring things out. And it, like, one of the challenges is like being able to physically connect with someone while still being safe. So if we need to touch, we touch. We don't touch until the last possible moment, and we hand sanitize before and after. And to make sure that we can put on the shows, I go to school, I'm wearing my mask the whole day, I come home, and I don't do anything until I have to go to rehearsal. So I'm making sure that all of my other actors are safe as well.
Since June, I've never felt unsafe. There's never been like a situation where I've been like, this isn't good, or safety is like a number one priority, and we do everything that we possibly can to make sure everyone stays safe and healthy and to make sure that these shows end up happening. But like speaking as like one of the like challenges I think for the show and just like this rehearsal process is with mask, you obviously you miss out on like facial expressions and all those things, and as an actor that's like your number one thing. That's how you like feed off your fellow people. And so I think once we move into Tech Week and the shows, once we're wearing face shields, I think that'll even add another layer onto the show and make it even more special than already is.
I would say not necessarily a challenge even, but just something kind of weird has been how quickly you get used to it, to acting in this new way, to acting without using your mouth much, and you have to rely a lot on your eyes and your eyebrows and your gestures, and how quickly it all becomes uniform, wearing a mask, going into rehearsal, immediately getting your temperature checked, hand sanitizing between runs and stuff. Like, I was scared going into this that it would be very overwhelming and that it would be something that could never leave my mind and I wouldn't be able to focus or actually enjoy it because I would just be stressing out the whole time. But I've always felt safe here. Like, I feel like in rehearsals, there's a lot of precautions that are taken. And it's just really weird how, like, it's always on our minds, but it's also, like, you get used to it really quickly. And at first, doing theater right now felt like this impossible thing, but now it feels a lot more achievable and not normal, but like we're making it happen.
If a bunch of teenagers can wear a mask for 4 hours and dance, you can wear a mask for 5 minutes in a store. Wear a mask, please, so we can get back to making regular theater.
Is it worth it to still be doing theater right now, even with all the challenges and setbacks?
There's a lot of community and connection in it, and I feel like that's something that we need a lot right now, Like, we've all been isolated, and even if things are kind of back to normal just with precautions and masks and stuff, everything still feels very weird and off and like the world is ending and we don't know what we're supposed to do. So having something that you can do, safely, differently, you're making compromises and learning how to do it in a new way, but still finding community and getting to build something with other people like that is really helpful and really important right now.
I think the arts has been fairly underappreciated in times like this, because like Broadway shut down and people don't realize how many others are out of jobs because of it. And so many people use the arts as like a form of entertainment, like movies. Movies aren't being made at the moment. And so like when you go without that, you realize, oh, these things are actually important. So it's so worth it to be making things that other people can watch and relate to.
And I think even coming to rehearsal with all these precautions, there's still just this sense of like, okay, this is normal. This is like what my life was before all this happened. And I think just having that and being able to see people that are like some of my best friends and like the people I love the most just all the time, 3-4 times a week is just really amazing. And it's really made this time a lot better.
Okay, one last question. Why should people come see our production or live stream our production of Antigone?
It has a lot of really good messages, and a lot of the themes and messages in it are stuff that we could still stand to learn from today. Like, it doesn't feel stuffy or detached or academic. It feels very connected and human and raw, and I think that that's really special.
It's probably one of, if not my favorite, and probably one of like the best shows Outcry has done, is probably what it is going to end up being. And Outcry is known for their awesome shows, and I think this one is really just like, it stands out on its own because, Outcry hasn't done a lot of like real Greek shows and shows with like a huge chorus, and I think these things make it so special. You come to see the show and you're going to feel the happiest happy you've ever felt, and you're also gonna be angry. You're gonna be so mad at these characters, but also you're gonna be so sad. Like, you're gonna feel absolute heartbreak. You're gonna go through every range of possible emotions that you could, and I think that's not something a lot of shows can really do for you, and this is definitely one of them, and I think that's what makes it so special and why everyone should see it.
So I've been acting for 10 years, and this is the biggest role I've ever played. It's so emotionally challenging, along with like Creon, and like all the characters go through these emotional moments and have their own emotional journeys that they have to go through, and it's so interesting to just watch, even as a chorus member, just sitting on stage and watching all these characters go through their emotions. So I can't imagine what it would be like to sit in the audience and see it. You're not going to be bored watching the show. You can watch the show the entire run and pick a different person to watch the entire time and just see what they're doing and be entertained.
Well, thank you guys so much for talking to me.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us for our latest episode of the Outcry Theatre Podcast. Antigone runs this weekend only. You can purchase tickets to stream the show virtually or find out more about this production at outcrytheatre.com. That's theater with an R-E. This podcast has been produced by me, Becca Johnson-Spinos, and edited by Jason Johnson-Spinos. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with your theater-loving friends.